All right, you are ready. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, good morning. My name's Bill Walkdock, Professor of Safety Science here at Embry-Riddle. I run the crash laboratory and teach most of our response and accident investigation classes. In case Colonel Peoples didn't tell you, I'm a retired Coast Guard officer. My entire professional career has been response of some sort. So I'm the other side of the safety equation. I get involved when bad stuff happens, and usually people are glad to see you coming. So, as opposed to a lot of the other safety endeavors. We should have some of our monitors down here in the classroom in just a moment. I'll introduce them if they get here in time. This is pass. Each of you has a site to work, and listen to your monitors. They'll try not to mislead you, but treat it as if it was real. Each of these sites involve a real crash. Each of these sites actually involve real fatalities. Again, treat it as if it was real. We will have some gloves for you. Adolfo. Adolfo is our lab director, and he can keep you straight. They're putting some more stuff in. Come on in if you're going to help. Anyway, so what I thought I'd do for the first day is just give you a very quick little mini tutorial on some of the things pertinent to accident investigation. And then starting tomorrow morning, when you check in, you'll be outside. Adolfo just meet them right out front here in the parking lot. Take them up, disperse them to their sites, and we'll proceed.
I got a question for you, because we do it a little different every year. All right, so Tuesday, are we going to show them their sites or an example site? How do you want to do that?
What would you prefer?
Well, I think what I prefer is maybe tomorrow, take them to not their site, because I got the team set up, we can split all that up. So we'll give them an example,
Okay.
and have, see one, do one, so see one tomorrow. And, 4 corners, this is how we do it, have the, people tell them what's going on. And then on Wednesday, this is their site, and this is what they need to do, what we saw on Tuesday.
Okay.
If that's okay. And that would also expose each team to different, crashes.
Adolfo?
Okay. Is that okay, sir?
5 days.
Thank you very much.
Adolfo, use the bargain.
Okay.
That's one of our easier ones.
Okay, perfect.
Nobody was assigned that one, so. Anyway, hopefully everybody's had a chance to at least look at this field investigation guide. I'm going to cover a couple of points, but not too much detail because it's there for you to read. And hopefully everybody's had a chance to go through your packets of information. Who's doing the R22?
They've all gone through your guide. We taught that last year.
Good.
I have not given the packets because I haven't assigned the crashes per our conversation just now.
Yeah, that's right.
So I can do that today.
Okay. Whoever gets the helicopter, make sure you look at the safety notices that Robinson puts out. They're attached to the back of the actual investigation. And you want to look at number 11 and number 32. That is a hint.
That's a good point. And I have all that copies ready to give to them. It's just that I didn't know how we can orchestrate this morning. I'll have to pull them.
Well, anyway, this is also being put on by the International Society of Air Safety Investigators, and we are the first student chapter. That's a professional society for aircraft accident investigation. We have several of our members in the back of the room. They're the ones who are actually doing this for you. So, anyway, let's take a look at a couple things right first. The 5 W's are basic to any investigation. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do, is to try to answer those 5 W's. And usually we'll start out with the who. Who's involved? Now with airplane crashes, it's a little bit different than some other investigations because we have the accident, which is a sequence of events leading to an outcome. We have the crash, which is the final phases of the accident sequence when the airplane hits the ground. And we have to distinguish, for example, who's involved in a crash, would you think? Most directly. Come on, Emily. Pilots, yeah. Pilots. Who else? Involved, not necessarily caused. Anybody? ATC, controlling the airplane, sure. What else? Who works on airplanes? Maintenance may be involved if they're there. How about crash fire? EMS. You know, everybody know what I mean by that? Emergency medical services, the crash fire rescue folks, and the cops are all gonna be involved. And anybody the airplane might land on. We've had that happen a few times too. Those are all the who that's associated with the crash. But what about the accident sequence itself? Sometimes we might have to go back 20, 25 years to understand who's involved in the accident sequence. Where it happened, the crash is obvious. What do we have? We got a busted airplane on the ground. So we know pretty well where it happened. What about where things happen with the accident sequence? Again, if we can identify the who, a lot of times we can identify the where. And the when, that falls into place too. When the crash happens, most of the time we've got pretty good information on that. But a lot of times we go back through the accident sequence, which we don't necessarily do for small plane crashes, mostly like what you're going to be working on. But what about a big airline crash? Sometimes we'll have to go back and look at when things happened and how they happened and who did it. And that'll help us understand the accident sequence. What happened could be something as simple as the pilot lost control of the aircraft. How many of you have seen the crash over in Russia the other day, about a week ago? Anybody other than my guys following that? When you get back home tonight, everybody have access to Google? Okay, the master finder of everything on the planet. Well, if you Google fly Dubai, D-U-B-A-I, you'll see one of the mysteries we've got right now that's going on. We had a crash with over in Russia with 62 people on the airplane, killed all of them. It's probably about the most extreme crash you're ever going to see. Airplane is busted into little bitty pieces, but we're starting to get more and more information as things develop. That's what happened. That airplane hit the ground from the looks of it at about a 70 to 75 degree impact angle. That's pretty steep. And it also looked like it was going real fast. So that could be what happened. And the fifth W is why. Why did the crash happen? Well, we know that 80 to 85% of all accidents involve human error. How many of you have heard that before? Okay. It's true. Now, human error, not necessarily just pilot error. I'm a pilot. I've been a pilot for too many years. Pilots make mistakes. Pilots can do some dumb things. But we've got a lot of help. So you have to look at everybody up here in the system to understand a lot of times why something happened. Why is almost always associated with pilots. Pilot either does something inappropriate that causes the crash or fails to do something that causes the crash. And either way, that one is the only one that we can actually make recommendations to fix a problem. So that's your real goal. Now, a couple of your accidents, the why, kind of slippery. A couple of them is pretty obvious. So your real goal is to understand why the crash happened. That's how we can fix things. What is an accident for that matter? We've all thought about it probably. First and foremost, it's something unplanned, unintentional. All of the events that happened on 9/11 were crashes. They were not accidents. Now, the results may look the same, but how we got there is different, and how we fix it is different. That's why we separate safety and security. The things that happened on 9/11 all involve security issues. We look for safety issues. So an accident has to be unplanned and unintentional. Has to be unforeseen. At least nobody saw it coming. And if you did see it coming, slide back up to the first one. Why didn't you do something to stop it? And negative outcome, by definition, accidents have to have a negative outcome, but it could be purely economic, could be loss of use of a vehicle, all the way up through a catastrophic major airline crash, everybody gets killed. It's a process. That's probably the hardest thing. There is no such thing as a single cause accident. I've never found one in all the years I've been doing this. It's a process, and it's a sequence of events that leads to an outcome. And actually, accidents are pretty rare. Because things have to line up just the right way to make them happen. Understanding what an accident is a big part of understanding how I can fix things and how I can learn from the accident and maybe make recommendations to fix things for the future. I can't go back in time, stop that one, but I can stop the next one. And if I fail to do that, I'm not doing my job. Everybody understand what an accident is? Good. Is that an aircraft accident? Now, you guys don't, Colonel Peoples, did you go through the difference between an aircraft accident and an accident?
No.
Okay, definitionally, an aircraft accident involves several specific things. This is in regulations. If anybody reads regulations, it's Title 49 CFR Part 830, that's where it is. But what an aircraft accident requires first and foremost is intent of flight. Somebody is intending to fly that airplane. From the time the first person gets on the airplane until the time the last person gets off. That's the clock for an accident. If it happens outside that period of time, it may be an accident, but it's not an aircraft accident. It has to involve certain things. It has to involve either injury, which also has its own definitions, fatality, or by far the greatest group of them are going to be substantial damage. Now that determines who investigates it. In the United States, if it meets the definition of an aircraft accident, the National Transportation Safety Board, who you've probably seen on TV, those folks are responsible for investigating the accident. If it happens outside that period of time, they may still investigate it, but not necessarily as lead investigators or producing a report. Sometimes the Federal Aviation Administration will. Sometimes the insurance, actually all the time, insurance companies will. And just because NTSB doesn't look at it does not mean it's not being investigated. But what's that? Other than, I'm not a Cardinals fan particularly. I hate to say this, go Chargers. They haven't been doing real well lately. Anyway, where's this airplane? It's in a hangar. It's sitting on the nose. That probably tell you something about whether or not it's an aircraft accident? And the answer is, it's not. This would fall in the class of industrial accidents. People will investigate this. The mechanics that were doing the work on this airplane were checking the landing gear on it. To do that on a big airplane like an A320 or a 737, you jack up the airplane, all 190,000 pounds of it, put hard stands, which mean basically jacks, underneath the wings, underneath the nose. Then you bring the gear up. And then you cycle it down again and check it, and bring it up and check and cycle it down. The supervisor wasn't here, he'd gone to dinner, and I like to call him Curly, Moe, and Larry. But I mean, okay, it means something to some of you. These folks decided to take a shortcut. Shortcuts get you in trouble. Normally, when I jack an airplane, I want a hard stand under the front part of the landing gear well and the rear part of the landing gear well. And because they're in a hurry, guess what they failed to do? They put the rear one in, did not put the front one in, and that was okay until they retracted the landing gear and then tried to extend it. And what happened to the center of gravity of the airplane? It shifted. And it just kind of fell forward onto the nose. That's $1 million damage. But it's not an aircraft accident. And it's going to be investigated a little differently. And what do you think probably happened to Curly, Moe, and Larry? Yeah. Unfortunately, to this day, we still do that with the folks that do things like that. But we should learn from them. And then fire them. Anyway, how about that? Now, that's an airplane crash, all right. This is MH17. How many of you have heard of that? This is the Boeing 777 overflying Ukraine a couple of years ago. And the folks that shot it down violated the #1 rule if you're going to shoot at something, which is what? Say again? No. More basic. How many of you fire weapons? Okay.
Make sure you want to kill it if you shoot at it.
Make sure what it is, which is exactly why you do what you said. Make sure it's a valid target, and these knuckleheads have been given an SA-4 anti-aircraft system, and nobody really thought to just go outside, look up at what is very clearly a civilian airliner before you pop a missile at them. Then they shot them down. The leader of the group actually posted on his Facebook page that they had just shot down a Ukrainian cargo airplane. They shot down a Malaysian airliner. Now, the Russians treat things like that a little bit differently. What do you think happened to that guy?
Siberia.
Say again?
Siberia.
It worse. Usually with something like this. Anyway, that's not an accident. That's an intentional act. What do you know about that? Say again? Well, it'll teach you not to do it twice. This is an accident or a crash that we're still not 100% sure of. This was an MD-82 flying at low altitude over Mali, which is a country in Africa that's a hotbed for terrorist activity. We suspect it's an intentional act. We're not sure. So sometimes it takes us a little time. Real quick, multilinear event sequences. I'm going to throw something on the board. Who's running that camera? Nobody? All right. Okay, just real quick. This is a way of diagramming the causes and events that lead up to an aircraft accident. This is the crash, just like we talked about. This event right here, very important. We call it the proximate event. This is the trigger. Without that, the rest of the accident sequence can't culminate. It's almost always associated with pilots. I already told you, but I'll say it again. Pilot does something inappropriate that triggers the crash, or fails to do something that should have stopped the crash, and the accident happens anyway. All of this stuff back here is part of our investigation, turning unknowns into knowns. And as we work forward, ultimately, we find the proximate event, again almost always associated with pilots, the crash. So that's the logic we use. We're kind of like historians. How many of you folks like history? Okay, in the military, you better love history. Okay? Otherwise, we make the same mistakes. But investigation is kind of like the practice of history in that we start from today and work backwards through time to figure out how we got here and hopefully learn things that will help us stop the next crash. So we're like historians in a lot of ways. To give you a quick example, anybody recognize what's going on there, or the aircraft in the middle particularly? What is it?
An XV-70 Valkyrie.
Amen. Okay. Two of these
You
we
should
sell.
get an A for that one, because that's an old plane.
Yeah, it is. Actually, this accident happened 50 years ago this June. They're out at Edwards Air Force Base. The Valkyrie was a really neat new technology aircraft, Mach 2.5. It had all kinds of gee whiz stuff that was way ahead of its time. Unfortunately, it was very, very expensive. And so the program got shut down really before they'd even gotten these airplanes finished. And they were transferred temporarily over to NASA to do aerodynamic research and high-speed flight research and all kinds of various other things, still wearing the Air Force markings. Now what this picture is a lot of times the folks that make things on airplanes want to advertise that here's our airplanes we put stuff on. Notice they're all different kinds of airplanes, and they're all flying very close to each other. We start getting into some hazard areas. And this aircraft out here is going to do something unusual. This happened to be the senior X-15 pilot out at Edwards Air Force Base, X-15, the airplane. But he's in this aircraft, and he gets a little bit too close to the right wing. partly because the photo director wanted all the airplanes together, and he couldn't get everybody in the picture, so he kept telling everybody, get close, get close, get close. That's what it looked like in trail. Look at the distance here. The other thing is, we didn't understand the wake turbulence issues the XB-70 had. That's a depiction of what occurred. Joe Walker got a little too close to that wing, trail, flips him upside down over, takes off a vertical fin, takes off the other vertical fin and the outboard wing, and we end up with that. Now, if I put this whole multilinear event sequence together, the crash is about to happen. We can't stop it. Proximate event would have been Joe Walker accepting that direction to close up too tight. That's how you figure out what it is, and just a sequence of events. The XB-70 actually did fly briefly. Departed controlled flight, because there's photo shoots going on. They got plenty of pictures of it on the way down. The aircraft commander did manage to punch out in the capsule that they had of the thing. The co-pilot didn't. We lost Joe Walker, we lost the F-104, we lost the co-pilot on this aircraft, and a lot of people got in trouble because what they didn't have was approval to do that photo shoot beyond the local level. Because of the expense of this aircraft and the significance of it, they should have actually had Pentagon level approval to do this. Nobody thought, hey, let's go up the chain and make sure this is okay. The safety officer at Edwards Air Force Base, when do you think he found out that this airplane had crashed? Right after it. He didn't have any opportunity to give his input as to whether this was a dumb idea or not. And when you put the whole thing together, you got a pretty good accident sequence out of it. This is some of the stuff that's just right straight out of your packet. This is all the stuff you need to do in a field investigation. And our main purpose is preservation of evidence. If you didn't understand that part, write it down. We do it by photos, we do it by diagrams, we do it by looking. And does anybody know what the most important tool you can bring to the scene of an accident is?
Brain.
Say again?
Camera.
Say again?
Your brain.
You guys, good kids. Anybody? It's your brain. Did you say that? Sing it out! Be proud! Come on. Yeah, it's your brain. That's the most important tool. And that's what you got to use when you go out and do these investigations. And tomorrow, Colonel Peoples is going to have you look at some of our folks do what you're going to do the next 3 days. But your brain is the most important part of the whole thing. Now, the last thing before I shut up, quick safety briefing. Each member of each team is responsible for everybody else in the team. Everybody copy that. Keep an eye on each other. You see something that doesn't look good, time out. We'll stop, get your monitor. Something's wrong, we'll fix it. If there's something moving, please don't pick it up. It's probably too cold right now, or going to be too cold right now for any of the more nasty things that could be moving. But still don't pick it up. We got pack rats out there like you wouldn't believe. But you want to keep in mind of where you are. You got sharp stuff. You got plants that have sharp stuff. Wear gloves. But also have black and blue gloves. I think we got it out. And I'll stop there and ask if anybody has any questions. That's a thumbnail sketch of what the folks get in the full term investigation. Distilled down. Questions? No questions?
Ask questions, guys.
Yeah?
Actually, tell them about the crash of the photo shoot here at Prescott Valley and Prescott Airport a few years ago.
Talking about the MiG-21 versus
Because that was another.
2006. We're coming up on the anniversary of that thing too. I knew 3 of the people in Piper Cheyenne. They didn't really have a mid-air collision. How many of you know what a MiG-21 is? Okay. It's basically an engine with some stubby little wings strapped on it, designed to do one thing. You go fast, and shoot down RB-52s before they get into Russian airspace. Doesn't maneuver very well, it's kind of a tank, and it's got all kinds of unusual features, but man, it goes fast. Piper Cheyenne. The Cheyenne 3 has a big T-tail. It's a turboprop airplane, pretty good sized airplane. Week after the air show in 2006, they're out doing a photo op or photo shoot for the public relations for the next air show that are coming year, which never happened. The MiG had a gear problem. Asked the pilot of the Cheyenne, who unfortunately happened to be one of my former students, to underfly him and take a look. I can't tell you what Billy was thinking, but he tried it. He wasn't used to the T-tail on that airplane, and to get that MiG slow enough so the Cheyenne could get underneath them, they've got their flaps out and they got that airplane at a very steep attitude, kind of hanging on the thrust, which means what's coming out the back end of that engine? Tremendous amount of jet wash. And he managed to stick the left side of his horizontal stabilizer into the jet wash, tore the tail off, flat spin, inverted, killed all 5 of them, but they never actually touched the MiG. It's not a mid-air collision. It's a different sort of thing. MiG got back to base. The 5 folks in the Cheyenne didn't. Now, imagine having to investigate that. Unsuppressed fire for about 8 hours, so most of what you got's burned up. You did have the tail a quarter-mile away, no fire on it. And it was pretty clear that something had taken it and torn it violently off toward the right. And that's the effect of the jet wash when you stick the left horizontal in it. Sad case. I've had unfortunate opportunity to work a few accidents where I knew the people. 12 years ago, I had the misfortune to have to go out and investigate 2 good friends who did have a mid-air collision practicing for an air show. So, anyway.
It's a good point. And that photo shoot was not planned. It was spontaneous. The MiG was taken off, and the guys were there and said, hey, it'd be great to take a picture of the MiG taking off. And I knew 4 of the guys, and they literally said, hey, we're going for a ride. You want to go for a ride? Yeah, it'd be great to go for a ride. They jumped in, but unfortunately the pilot, like he said, was not trained in close formation flying with a military aircraft and did not know some of the threats. And there's a monument in Prescott there for all 5 of the people, and it was a horrible, horrible situation. And that's why we had an air show. In what, 4 years? Yeah, how long?
We haven't had a real air show in 10.
Yeah.
Anybody got relatives that are lawyers? Blame the lawyers for this one, because
It's still ongoing, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, well, they finally did settle it out
Okay.
just last year, so maybe we'll go back to having air shows, but one of the plaintiffs retained an attorney who had some aviation experience. The first thing he did was sequester any money donated to the air show fund, which means you couldn't use it for the air show because they're going to try to pay it off to the families. Now, that's why we
Okay,
have an air
so
show.
tomorrow, guys, we got like 3 minutes. Tomorrow, guys, please, you're in civilian clothes, which is good. It's basically right out here. We'll meet you on the back side, right? And we're gonna leave the exact same schedule every day. And please, guys, bring gloves if you can. You don't need girls, no high heels. You're gonna be walking in dirt and kicking metal. And so tomorrow, everybody go see the Varga and go through the initial things. We'll give them the assignments for that time, and then on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they're actually doing the work. Is that okay, sir?
That works for me.
All righty, thank you very
Hold
much.
on 1 second, you 2 stand up.
Stand
No,
up.
and you 2, stand up. Be dressed like them.
Here we go, round of applause, yeah. So tomorrow they'll get A's, and they don't get A's today, okay? It's A's uniform day.
Thanks for coming, we'll see you in the morning.
All right, thank